Hey, Pastor, welcome back. It's good to have you here. Pastor Dimitri, St. Petersburg, Russia, and your wife, Anya, is here with us too. And I wanted to just take a few minutes today as we share on this podcast and with our team that's here about your journey, that some of the stories that I know, and I'll just I'll throw them out and then we can hit them. Because I want people to hear how that against great odds, the will of God will be done in your life. Against opposition. Because if you know Russian people, they have very much an artisan. That whole part of the world has a beautiful soul, and that's why opera is important to you. You have ballet dancers in your church, which is amazing. You may have opera singers, I don't know. Like your personal assistant is a prima ballerina, right?
Well, she was not a prima ballerina, but
okay, different levels.
She's a graduate from the one of the famous oldest kind of royal ballet schools of Russia.
And so you were born in the 80s, and you were
64.
You and your wife are literally artists. You weren't trained. You didn't come from a missionary. Did you have any Christians in your family?
No, actually, I was brought up by the nuclear mix. My dad was a professional preacher of communist values. He was a propagandist.
So he was a preacher of communism.
Yeah, he was a propagandist in the Scientific Institute. And my mom, she worked for KGB.
Your mom worked for I didn't know that. Your mom worked for the KGB.
You knew that. 3 generations. All her parents were working for KGB, and so that's the environment I was brought up.
Wow.
And I'm glad, because, when you enter in a phase of the heretic phase, everybody facing it in teenage years, you rebel against everything else. Probably if I was brought up in the right upbringing, I would have rebelled against it. But because I was brought up with a communist preacher and a KGB agent, I rebelled against that. So, and that helped.
So I learned something. So picking up the story, I don't know if you and Anya are dating or married, but you are a student and you're studying art at the, I want to say Montage, at the
Academy of Arts, but it's a restoration school.
You were in a restoration.
At that moment, when I got saved, I was working already. I was working in the restoration, and we had basically graduates from different schools, a part of the same organization that commissioned artists to do certain work around the city of St. Petersburg in museums.
So you're at the beautiful museum, and there's Rembrandt's. We've actually been there. We did the speed tour. But there's Rembrandt's. There's these amazing paintings by these classical painters. And you start looking at the paintings.
Well, actually, first encounter that I had, supernatural encounter, and I don't think I told you that. I think it was 2nd grade. We were in school, just kids, and we were in Russian Museum. And I remember I just got straight. I just, all by myself, the group moved on, and I think I was captivated by something. And I remember there's an enormous painting by the famous Russian artist Bruni, and the painting that's the Brazen Serpent.
Wow.
It's depicting this
2nd grade.
Story. Huh?
You saw a picture of the Brazen Serpent.
And the painting is it takes entire wall. And I'm a little kid, and it's literally from the floor, and I was standing in front of it. And seriously, I remember I had like an experience like probably in Narnia. It was just being sucked into the painting. And I saw these people just with a horror in their faces, that being bitten by snakes and stuff like that. And I was terrified. And I just, for some reason, I knew That's what I have to look at, that brazen serpent on the pillar. I didn't know why. Nobody explained me. I had no clue what's going on there. I had never heard the story.
For people listening, that's what Jesus said in reference to that, like that. If the Son of Man be lifted up, he will draw all men unto him. And he was doing that.
And actually, later, years later, when I got saved, when I heard this story, that episode from my childhood just kind of returned to me. And I thought, wow, it was pretty amazing.
Wow. So you're older, and you're in the museums, and you see like Rembrandt's The Prodigal, which is amazing. Just, I don't know if you can look it up online, but look at Rembrandt's painting of The Prodigal. It's a massive, and other ones. So you're looking at what's going on.
And of course, when you study art, you study a lot of technical things, the composition, the lighting, the materials the artist used, and styles and stuff like that. But still, the main thing about the artist is really why he picked up that particular story and why he decided to depict it. Why he bothered to use, the painstakingly. Sometimes it's taken years in order to put this into the canvas, on the canvas in the frame. And I had that question, okay, what's the story behind it? Because a lot of these paintings, I would say probably 80%, they're biblical stories. And of course, when you study in the communist art school, they tell you everything, but nothing about the, religious context. And they said, well, it's a biblical story, it's a religious story. And at the same time, your dead propaganda said, oh, it's a bunch of fairy tales from mentally retarded people. Superstitions and stuff like that. So, and obviously, makes you wonder why these artists that we admire, we're amazed by their talent, we study everything about them, ignore that part of their life, their dedication to that particular theme. You can't help it but wonder. Okay, we admire the artists, but we despise what they've painted. And it didn't really connect, so it was kind of a cognitive dissonance. Until November 9, 1986.
November 9, 1986, what happened?
I was off, I didn't work that day, and I was just basically without any particular purpose, wandering through the streets of old city of St. Petersburg. It's always fun to notice something interesting, beautiful that you haven't seen before. And I was on the Arrow of Vasily Island. There's lighthouses there. It's a beautiful area. You could see the Hermitage there and a lot of different beautiful palaces along the banks of the river. And I was walking, minding my business, and then I realized that I was surrounded by a group of people. Actually, I walked into a crowd. And that was, Russians usually never made eye contact, or it was very brief. You kind of stare down, don't attract much attention. And the first thing I noticed, I looked down and I saw the boots.
Cowboy boots.
These were not Russian boots. Imagine that, the monochrome landscape. It's just no colors whatsoever. And all of a sudden you see in this November Russian mud mixed with the snow, yellow cowboy boots.
Yellow cowboy boots.
It's totally out of this world. So of course I looked up and I saw the really round face, the biggest smile I've ever seen in my life. And I was so shocked, I didn't know what to do. And it took less than a minute. I think it's a few seconds, but to me it was like an eternity. I stared at him, he stared at me, he smiled. And like you like to reflect the people's expression on their faces, but Russian facial muscles not developed to produce the smile. So I kind of scared him probably. But anyway, the tour guide rescued me from that very awkward moment. She put them back on the tour bus and they drove off. And I thought, that was close. Because you could get in trouble with the authorities by hanging with foreigners at that time. And of course, Cold War. That's pretty much. You were our enemies, the capitalist sharks that
Yes.
want to devour our, socialist system, stuff like that. Anyway, hours later, the shock kind of evaporated, so I was all right. And I thought I should probably come to St. Isaac Cathedral. It's a beautiful, big church. I mean, it is really beautiful. Architected by Montferrand, and there is a Brülow, the colleague of Bruni, the one with the brazen serpent. They were competitors too. Brülow and his apprentices, they painted the entire interior of the cathedral and made mosaics. So, and there was a friend of mine who was working there, so I just went there to see how he's doing and maybe have something to eat. It was about lunchtime. And guess who I saw when I walked into that cathedral? The first person I saw there? The guy in the yellow boots.
Yellow cowboy boots.
Yeah, and the smile. And at that moment, first of all, of course, in a city of 5 million people, when you bump into people like that, it's little more than just a coincidence. You don't really, it doesn't happen very often. So, and we kind of met like good friends. Oh, I was surprised. He was surprised. But the good thing, the group was scattered, so the tour guide couldn't interfere. And he was pointing at some of the paintings, some of the mosaics, Jesus' ascension, all of that. And he was excited about that. But the excitement was a little different. I thought probably he just admires the artwork, but it seemed like a little more than that. And I thought he probably knows something about it. Anyway, but I couldn't speak English. My English was limited to the school program. Like, my name is Dmitry Polyakov. I live in Leningrad in Poltavskaya Street. So that's about it. And he didn't speak any Russian. And then I noticed the phrase, just all of a sudden I started to understand certain things like Hotel Leningrad. That's what he mentioned. And I figured that's probably the place where they're staying, so I thought maybe he initiates the way to meet. So I had a notepad and a pencil and just drew the river, the aurora, the revolutionary boat that is kind of bolted to the embankment there, the hotel and the bridge, and marked place on the bridge with a cross. He seemed understood. Then we tried to figure out the time. Anyway, I thought at 9 p.m. tonight, we're going to meet on that bridge.
So you met him. You set up a rendezvous.
Yes, we set it up.
Wow.
Okay, and then I figured I need somebody to help, so I invited my friend Nikki, who also knew a couple of words in English. So I thought together we probably could manage a little better. And we were on that bridge at 9 p.m., waiting there for probably about 30 minutes. Nobody shows up. So we thought maybe, it's getting late, so maybe they forgot, maybe they don't know where it is, maybe they get tired. Anything could happen. So then we decided to go to the subway, go back home. And as we were walking toward the subway, we bumped into another friend of ours who we studied with. He was in the army and he just returned. Then he said, "Hey guys, if you have nothing to do, let's go to my place. Let's catch up and see." So we figured, yes, nothing on our agenda. So we were crossing that bridge because the guy happened to live in the building that blue thing, the blue eye, he called it, because it's decorated with a blue, kind of a violet tiles. And it was right across the street from the hotel. Anyway, we were crossing that bridge exactly an hour later, 10 p.m., and these guys were there. So the third time, by coincidence, we bumped at each other. Anyway, and that was the night then when we got saved, because they had a young man from he was American-born, a third generation American-born from Russian descent, and they kept the Russian language in the family. So he was able to interpret. And I can't recall really what the name, the man's name in the yellow boots was Dave Asala.
Dave what?
Dave Asala. He was from wonderful state of Wisconsin. He was a Yankee. It's not his fault. But this man has been really a great friend and mentor and father in faith for us, because he helped us later on to get to Rhema Bible Training Center in 1990. He moved from Wisconsin when we came to Tulsa to study. He moved with his family, with his wife, to from Wisconsin to Broken Arrow to be closer to us.
So this man, three chance Spirit-led encounters.
Oh, I'm telling you, it's a
And
it's a
did he
precision
when
work.
did he give you the little red book?
There was orange, Gideon's New
He
Testament.
gave you Orange Gideon's New Testament in English, not in Russian.
No.
So what did you do with it?
Well, actually, later on I found out, because this was the group of pastors who were disguised as a tourist. And they were coming to Russia with a purpose to smuggle Bibles. And actually, they had a few Brother Hagin's books translated into Russian. And they were doing translation in Finland, which was the vision of Jim Caseman. Jim Caseman, who was a graduate from Rhema, he had the vision about printing some of the Brother Hagin's books in Russian language, and they were doing it in Finland. The translation was terrible, but the scriptures were all right because they were taken directly from the Bible. So they also had some Russian Bibles that were confiscated at the border. They found them, they took them, and it's a miracle that they let them in.
Yeah, yeah.
But and
So-
he managed to have his
So
Gideon's New
you
Testament.
were so hungry at that point, or inquiring, you got a dictionary, a Russian dictionary?
Of course, here's finally, this is an anti-Soviet book that I was dreaming about having, and it's in English. Okay, and what do? You get the biggest dictionary you could find and
So
start.
you translated it, the New Testament, word for word.
Well, I started with book of Matthew. You start with the beginning, and I noticed that there's no such words in dictionary. And do you remember first chapter of Matthew? It's genealogy. It's the names of all these people. I thought, that's some kind of a joke. I mean, what's all about? Who are these people? I figured out, it took me a while to figure out that they're just the names, some kind of a people, because these were not the words from the dictionary. Anyway, but then when I struggled through this first chapter, when I got to the story of Christmas, then bingo. And I remembered dozens of artists who depicted that scene. And here's the Hermitage. This is that's basically my picture book of
Yeah,
the
the
gospel.
Hermitage became the picture book to the New
Absolutely.
Testament you were trying to
So
understand.
it started coming together
Amazing.
because all of these paintings that I knew, that I loved, and that I studied, all of a sudden start gaining some meaning and definition. So it was phenomenal. Yeah.
Yeah, so was there a moment you felt like you first encountered the Lord?
I can't. They were pretty much everything. These three meetings, I knew it's God. It's nothing. What would be the odds meeting somebody 3 times in the different parts of the city, with a city of population of 5 million?
Yeah,
I mean,
amazing. Did your parents ever suspect something happened?
by that time, my mom and dad were divorced, so at some point they were able to separate. Dad moved out, and me and my mom stayed in this communal flat. And it was we had a couple of rooms there. And of course, when it happened, when I came to know Jesus and I got this Bible, of course I figured I gotta keep it really, really secret. I don't want the mother to find out about it. But you see, I had to do the translation because by the time you get to the end of the sentence, you forget what the first words were all about. So I had to write it down in the notebooks. And I was hiding the notebooks in my desk, between the boards. That was a pretty cool place I found. I was very proud of myself. But then mother kind of left out, so she got her own apartment, and I stayed there, and there was no need to hide it anymore. However, there were a couple of years passed by, and actually a year, and me and Anya were already married at that time, and I think it was actually our daughter either was born or just about to be born. It was 88. And so, yeah, I think it's 4 years past that. By year 1990, when we got the invitation to come to Bible school, I realized I have to tell my mother somehow, because she was still working for KGB. I thought it wouldn't be really good if I'll just disappear like that. So we had to tell her. But we waited till the very last day, because tomorrow I was supposed to be flying to the States.
At this point, so to clarify, you were going to a Bible training center in America in Tulsa, Oklahoma.
Yeah, it was
so
1990.
he's leaving in 1990, so he's going to tell his mom that you're a Christian and you're going to Bible school.
Exactly. So I waited till the last moment so she wouldn't be able to mess it up. So and part of the deal also, I thought, well, I mean, it was so unreal for me at that moment, so I thought it's probably not going to happen. So I better not bother my mom with all of these stories.
Because that was a miracle to get to
absolutely.
Tulsa. Yeah.
So, but when all the paperwork's been done, I'm supposed to be leaving tomorrow. So me and Anya, we went to my mom's apartment, and I told mother, please do not interrupt me. I have a very important thing to tell you, and I'll answer your questions afterwards, but just listen. And I even closed my eyes because my mother, she could stare at you like sternly. I mean, she was very intimidating. I mean, profi. And I start telling her all the story, what I just telling you, how it's all happened and stuff like that. And then I basically told her, and tomorrow I'm going to the States to study Bible. And I opened up my eyes, and there was a silence. Mother was silent, and I noticed the tears sparkling in her eye. And she started telling me, like a couple of years ago, she was cleaning my desk when we were leaning together.
Wow.
And she found a notebook, and she read it. And she said, I didn't know what to do about it, but I felt like it's not just kind of a youthful trend or things like that. It's pretty serious, isn't it? I said, you bet. It's pretty serious. So, and God gave me the greatest gift, parting gift. So my mother accepted Christ, and we prayed with her. And then she went on the early retirement.
Out of your translation.
And she was able to visit us in Raymond following year, which was a miracle too, because she was not supposed to be living for 10 years after the retirement. And she came for Easter, and that was her first time in her entire life she went to the church was when Rhema Bible Rhema Bible Church just completed the new building, and there were everybody walking from
That was like 1995 or something.
It was 92.
92.
No, 91.
91, wow.
91. So everybody walking there and entering, and it was just literally like heaven. I mean, yeah.
Wow.
Mama was blown away.
Yeah, so the story continues, and it gets more interesting, and kind of a theme that I want us to think about is how this is just impossible stuff, and a plan that God knew, but you were just willing. And I want to say that to people: be faithful and be willing. And God's going to get the guy, the Holy Spirit with yellow cowboy boots or whatever it's going to take. but he's going to fulfill and be faithful to complete the good work that he started. And some of the time, the will of God is not lineal like we want it to be. It feels static at times. It feels ups. It feels like delays. It feels like disappointment some of the time. Like, why didn't this all work out? And all of that stuff. But just being in love with him and doing it. So I want to pause for a second because something came to me, an old story, because there's a lot of creatives listening to us here today, whether it's music and you're a musician, you're both creatives, your wife's a wonderful artist. I have a painting in my office from you guys of the alabaster, because you heard me preach on the alabaster in Russia, and they had it painting done for me of breaking your alabaster for the Lord. And I remember the story, and it was when they were cleaning the Sistine Chapel, that people who studied art saw the dark tones, the somber feeling of the art, all this stuff when they would look at it. And so the music was somber, the color palette was very limited to gray and all this stuff. But there came a time they went to clean Michelangelo's art in the Sistine Chapel, and you guys know restoration, so you know the story better than I. But as they cleaned it, they realized that it wasn't gray. It was the most brilliant colors. It was the most brilliant color palette. It was vibrant. It was alive. It was glorious. And they said, we've mistranslated God because we let the candle wax and the soot of religion blind us to the beauty and the presentation of the glory of God. And I say that to creatives here. Here is Rembrandt preaching to a guy in a state of communism they'd been there for almost 75 years, but the power of it. And so in that creative realm, there's both spirit and there is soul, and there's the glory of God, and there's the presence of God. You see it, you feel it. That's why what Hollywood does it can glorify darkness in a bad way, or our gifts can reveal and be released for the glory of God. Music, getting over in the spirit. But isn't that amazing story?
Pastor Randy, it's just popped in my mind, exactly in line with what you're saying. You remember, I hope, when we were in Hermitage, as you approach the Leonardo's, there's 2 paintings of Leonardo in the Hermitage, and you walk through the gallery that is depicting the church religious art from the 13th century, actually 12th century even. And you could see the evolution of it, and that's my theory. Really, when you see the two-dimensional kind of a really sort of a like children's sketches, a very clumsy kind of done certain works, you could see how they gain dimension and shade and color and things like that. And up to the 15th century, when the Renaissance actually brought life into religious painting. And you remember what happened in the 1600s? Reformation. So I think, and here's my theory. I can't say that's the way it is, but what it speaks to me is, for example, back then, literature was very limited in terms of resource and means of influence, because very few people could afford books or could read the books and study. But the painting, the art, the visual arts were more popular, more kind of available and accessible by the people in general. And so the artists, the artists with visual arts, or the painters, they had tremendous influence on the society. And I think the Reformation is actually there was the next step, because what they did, they brought the gospel in the context of their life. If you look at the Rembrandt, I mean, they were all dressed in Renaissance clothes and stuff like that. I mean, they brought the gospel into their contemporary life, in their culture. And I think that's, they lined it up really well there in the museum, because it's kind of gives you a clue, and then you arrive to Leonardo and you see, hey, this is pretty much, that's a real, live, I mean,
preaching
nothing just out of the world about it. So it's really something that we live in. It's really close. It's closer than ever.
So, carrying this story along, I want you to see the miracle thread of, if your heart is yielded to God, you don't know. I say many times, the will of God is like links of a chain. And God builds your life link by link. And it's the surrender, it's the obedience to each link that before you look back, you say, oh, there's a whole chain there. But at the moment, you had a link. And these events chain together. So now, to fast forward, you arrive in the States, you're in Tulsa, you're in Bible school, and there's a great man of God who pioneered what was known as Victory Christian Center. If you go around America, there were in the 80s and the genesis of the charismatic revival, Victory Christian Centers, and there's this great man of God by the name of Billy Joe Daugherty. Has anybody ever heard of him before? Billy Joe Daugherty. He was a prince of a guy. And unbeknownst to him, he's at a Bible school at a training center, but he's going to church. You, Anya, are going to church?
Yeah, and we were, because we lived in the student housing, and we didn't have a car, so we just crossed the street over. We went to the Rhema Bible Church. But then our friend invited us to visit this Victory Christian Center. And
so they don't know that Billy Joe Daugherty, the wall has come down, and Billy Joe Daugherty, he's a mega church pastor. And God put it on his heart to go to Russia to begin to hold crusades. But he didn't want to go to Moscow, where everybody wanted to go. He wanted to go to St. Petersburg. And in walks, and I've heard Billy Joe in his own words give this story. So he says, in walks these Russians, and they say, you say something like, so we hear you want to go to Russia.
Well, how it happened, because Billy Joe was at the door shaking hands as the people were coming out. So, and a friend of ours said, oh, let's go and meet him. And actually, during that church service, he spoke about that when God told him to come to Russia and be in St. Petersburg for 17 months straight, every month, hold the meetings in the largest indoor arena.
Yeah. So he says, yes, but I want to go to St. Petersburg. They say, we're from St. Petersburg. So God has told Billy Joe, a mega church pastor, to take 1 week every month, fly the team to St. Petersburg, Russia, for 17 months.
Okay. It's not that easy. Come on. He said, yes, I've tried to contact some pastors there, but they told me it's not the time. And I actually know what pastor told him that. He said, no problem, we can take care of this. And actually, we start the preparation. So our little church and some other churches, they start preparing for all of that, just different organizational things. And then this episode that not too many people know about it. Billy Joe Daugherty's house gets on fire at night. So he suffered some burns, and he was taking children
You know, I
out,
remember that.
saving his family.
Lucy's daddy was a surgeon at Oral Roberts School of Medicine. He opened the Department of Surgery, and we were sitting in church like a week or two later. They're hearing him tell the story. It was a hot water heater blew up or something like that.
I don't know the details, but
Yeah.
anyway, that was
Yeah.
there was some serious stuff. So, and he's in the hospital, you know, and we're thinking, hey, and this is supposed to be, that could be a major obstacle to that. So, and when we checked with him, are you probably going to delay it, postpone it? I said, no way, I'm definitely coming. So, and that's the rest of the history.
So the next 18 months, you guys went and helped. And Ira, who's with you
Yeah.
at the church, a wonderful lady, was a young teenager back at that time, right?
Well, yeah.
Was she, or what? I don't
We're
know.
in the early 20s.
Early 20s, okay, early 20s. And she was a worship leader, and she's been in our meetings now. Actually, she's been to Tokyo with us, and she's amazing. And so led worship in these meetings. And what happened when those meetings over those months?
That was incredible. First of all, of course, we can't define it as a revival. The people were getting saved, people were getting healed. I mean, and that's...
Did you ever think you'd see that in your city? What did you do when you sat there and saw masses now coming to Christ?
Well, you know, I think it was consequential. We expected that. That's what we prayed for. And even
you
though
didn't have
when
a
you-
moment where you
when
like,
you well, I mean, when you always excited because it's always exceeds your expectations, but I think that's yeah. And when you pray and when you ask God for something, when He answers, it's not okay. I knew it's going to happen. You're never this way. You're always amazed. You're always blown away. But at the same time, here's two things. Here's two directions you can go with. You can become a spectator and just sit back and enjoy it, and gradually, you don't even notice how it happens. That gradually, you become a person who really become addicted to that kind of a sight, and you start seeking for these things and stuff like that. Unfortunately, every good thing that God gives can backfire if it's taken with the wrong heart. And you know, I mean, I've seen great things happen there. I've seen a lot of great ministers came out of that. And at the same time, I've seen a lot of churches buried their vision initially, something that God spoke to them.
So during that meeting, there were hundreds of thousands of people in St. Petersburg.
Total, we're trying to make an estimation. I think at least like 3.5 million people went through these meetings. Some people, of course, that were coming back there and stuff like that.
3.5 million. And the thing, again, to emphasize is that each step of this way, the best he knew, there was a yes to what he felt God was doing. He may not, you didn't have perfect understanding, but there was a yes to go to the bridge. There was a yes to go to Bible school.
There was something always that just wants you, you feel like the Holy Spirit wants you to be involved in whatever way, and you just basically make yourself available, even if you don't understand it fully, if you don't probably feel incompetent in certain things, but still you there.
Yeah.
And or you could become a spectator and just stare at that.
So the meetings are over, but what began to happen is a bunch of church planting in Russia at that time. And there was a movement that came out of it, the Union of Christian Churches, or somewhere along that line. You and some other Russians were a part of a union.
We actually, well, me and Nikki, that was in 1995. And in fact, there was quite a few churches were already planted, but there was no intent. It's like, every church can start a new church by accident.
Yeah.
Accidental churches, terms.
But the real work starts. Yeah, the real work starts.
Well, yes,
Yeah.
but and it's all right. It's it's great. You never miss it with planting a new work, a new church. I mean, it's great. But at the same time, there was no structure. There was no really kind of a vision in general.
Yeah.
And everybody were trying to do their own thing. And what we felt is a need, so the pastors would have a sort of an outlet and an opportunity to horizontally meet, minister to each other, hear from each other, share their experience. And that's when we started to do the pastors' holidays. It was kind of it's not really a conference. It was more like, yes, we had some good speakers in the morning and evening sessions, but during the day and stuff like that, it was sports, it was bonfires, it was all kinds of different things. So it mingled, and people from different regions, I mean, from everywhere in the country.
So people to understand, Russia, from Moscow to the east coast of Russia is 11 time zones?
No,
or
from
across,
Kaliningrad. From Kaliningrad.
11 time zones across Russia. So Moscow to Chicago right, is closer than
it's about 10-hour flight, I think.
Yeah, so and how far from Moscow to the east of?
It's 12-hour flight.
It's farther from Moscow to the east coast of Russia than it is from Moscow to Chicago. So where I want to go, and then just kind of wrap up, but let me back up where my journey with the man with the yellow boots and this history is going on. We're a beginning church years ago. I forget what year it was, Anya, but you guys had a need because the laws were changing. You had to have a building, and 2000, no, it was like 2004 or 2005, somewhere around there. And we're in this room for service one night, and we are believing God to buy this place. It's in the 30 days of us buying this place. And we need $250,000 cash, and we need to close in 30 days on the $5.5 million. And it was going to take miracles. And God was doing it. So the week before, the Lord told us to take the offering, and we gave it to a church that needed new carpet. And I'm like, Lord, you're picking on us. Like, we need $250,000, and we're coming to the day. So the next Wednesday comes, and a friend of ours, a mutual friend of ours, says, hey, there's a lady from Russia. We know you guys love Nation. She's coming, and I had never laid eyes on Russia, on Anya. I'd never seen you. You weren't on that trip. And I'm sitting about here worshiping the Lord, and Anya, in her gracious way, just walks in front of me. And I don't even think we made eye contact. And when she walked in front of me, the Lord says, give her the entire offering tonight. They have a need. And I'm again, Lord, we're coming up to the day where we don't have enough money to close, and we keep giving it away. And so we did it. But it was a connection of our heart. All these years from that time, they got their office. Somehow God provided the rest of it. And they still have that to this day. And it was just a requirement. And a cool story to finish that is we don't have enough money, and we are days away from closing and giving it away. and I am praying for someone's baby in Hong Kong. And I call them, and I'm praying for them. I'm praying for the healing of their baby. It had flu or RSV or something. And the baby, as I'm doing it, the lady says to me, "Pastor, you've been on our heart, and we know you're closing on your building, and the Lord's telling us you don't have enough money. How much do you need? We'll write the check. We'll write the check for the balance of what you need to close on the building right there." And I learned something of that. I told him the exact amount. I should have told him a little bit more, where there would have been at least $10 left in the account after we closed. Carol can tell you, there might have been 20 cents. I think it was it $80? I don't remember. We had nothing left in the account. And now we've got to pay for the whole thing. And thank you so much. And so there's this connection. So what's happened is this union is was at one time about 500 churches across.
It went up to 700, but then it's reduced
700
through the period of time.
And a few years ago, one of the leaders went home to be with the Lord. This is, being faithful for a lifetime. Now we're 35 years, 40 years into the journey, and I remember you walked in my office and you said, "Pastor, the leaders have shifted. Maybe now it's time for Tennessee to come to Russia, because you and Anya are now the leaders of this union of these churches across Russia to try to strengthen them, revitalize them, equip them." It's a massive job. When you think of these guys, it's just a massive, massive job. And what I hope you hear in this story is being faithful, being willing, not having to have it all planned, because how much of this was planned? But do you regret any of it? No. And you guys, you have built homes for drug addicts, and I think you built a home for the drug addicts in the city of the devil. The name of the city is like the city of the devil.
That's the pit of the devil.
Sortavala. And so it's like, this is the city of the devil. Okay, we're going to go build a home for getting people off drugs.
That's where the angels stay.
It's where it is, I know. And they've been imprisoned, they get bans, they go up and down, and now they're loving hundreds of pastors at every level and background and painful things they go through. And we've endeavored, with everything going on with the war, things have changed, but to stand with them, to believe God for that. And I know it's been a life of miracles, and it was just being faithful. And I want to just give this last tribute to the Russian people. Not only the artisan heart, when you make a friend with them, they're very friendly, but they have a heart that we could learn from, and that is this: nothing stops them. It's like a law changed against the church. Oh, we don't care. We go through the mountain, we go over the mountain, we go under the mountain, we go around the mountain, but we go. And this is the heart that I have received from the Russian bear. And they, like when COVID hit, the world freaks out. And the Russians are like, hey, just the latest thing. It's just like, we go through the mountain, we go around the mountain, we find the opportunity in this situation. And I say that to salute and how these Russians have loved the Ukrainians. and have gone there and ministered and spent their money and done it. And to this year, to this time, they have had to move from building to buildings. Things, get outlawed, they get shifted, they get changed. But the will of God will be done in your life. Receive that. If you're watching today, you just receive it. Keep a heart that's pure. Keep a heart that just a yes to the Lord. And don't limit God. I'd say that's another thing. Don't limit God, because if you wrote your story.
If I knew, at least, it would probably 15% of what's going to happen, I would have deadbolted my door and wouldn't stick my nose out. Seriously, I would have sat there and just trembled.
Yeah.
But it's like walking across the Red Sea, because that's the whole point, because God takes you out and then you look back and, what was it? There just a Red Sea that we crossed?
Yeah.
Yep. But that's the thing. Or like with Abraham, when he took Isaac to the mountain to sacrifice, and he doesn't torture you. You're like, oh, okay, well, Dad, here's the fire and the wood, and who's the sacrifice? You, son. Okay, you just keep your mouth shut and go. No, he never does it. He kept it till the very last moment, so he won't torture us with that. And when it's all said and done, he looked back and said, "Oh, that was God delivering." So he does it a lot of times. He kind of discloses his plan for our sake, so we won't freak out before time, and follow. So.
Well done, Dimitri. God bless you. I love you. God bless you. Thank you. So I hope that is encouraging. If you stay willing, I was going to teach you on some things that would help. Don't let bitterness in your life. I've watched them. There's 1,000 things a day at times that could offend them. But do not let bitterness forgive. And I will tell you something. If you did what you did out of a pure heart unto the Lord, and everything crashed and burned, you will not lose. He is faithful. That whatever you've done for him, he will repay. And he will just open another pasture, another place, and you'll go on. But to become bitter becomes defiling, and then he can't use us because we defile people. So do not become bitter. Stay faithful. Just be faithful. It's like we don't have to be the most talented in the room, but we can be the most faithful. And stay in your assignment, even when it's in secret and hidden. A great man of God that he was trained by, I was trained by, just used to say, days of preparation are never wasted. And some of the time you feel like, Lord, how long am I going to be in preparation? I promise you, you'll be grateful for every day you were in preparation and not in the pressure of things going on. Develop your faith in these times. Each one of these steps was a step of faith. To leave his motherland, to go back to his motherland, to tell his mother, to meet the guy on the bridge, to take the leadership of the churches, which is just in the natural. It's impossible. It's just totally impossible without God to do what they're assigned to do right now. But they're doing it, and they're being faithful. And God will always look for a faithful person. Develop your faith. Learn, just keep enjoying hearing the voice of God, being led by the Spirit day to day. Doesn't always have to be epic things. Just like, I don't know why you went and got us water, but just hear the Lord and just be led by the Spirit, because sons and daughters of God are led by the Spirit. And so enjoy that. And like, don't be all uptight about it. And don't, it's not, You don't want to wait till it's life and death. Do it daily. Just be led by the Lord. Get flashes from the inspiration of the Lord in your spirit and lean into it. And it'll hone you into the frequency of the Holy Spirit and what He's doing. And so take those times. Develop your love walk. Because your greatest faith moments are going to come out of the greatest passions and love. Listen, there is no greatness that you will ever achieve apart from the love of God. All greatness is measured by the love of God, because it's measured by heaven's standard, not by this earth's standard. And so we must grow in our love. And you will be required to love enemies. You will be required to love persecutors. Have you ever had a persecutor or enemy? and you know, I mean, I did not want to go back to Russia. They know this. They love me anyway. They overlook my offense, whatever. I'd had a rough time. I didn't want to go. And I remember it was our first flight back to Russia. It's the first time I ever had an airplane breakdown over the North Atlantic. And we got engine trouble, and we have to make an emergency landing, trying to just get there. And like this stuff happens to them every day. But you know. So it's like Josh was on that flight. I think Carol was on that flight, and I mean literally the steward of the flight is a lady, and she came up and she goes, "I've never had this happen before. This has never happened before." And she's like panicking, and I said, "Ma'am, it's gonna be fine. It's okay." And it was the engine outside my window, and where Pastor Lucy and I were. And instead of getting there in 10 or 12 hours, it took us 35 hours, but we got there, praise God. And there will be some things that happen, and you laugh about the stories later, you know. But you'll have resistance. So strengthen your resolve, and then continue to grow. Continue to grow in your knowledge, your revelation knowledge. You know, have wisdom, have revelation, have understanding of the ways of the kingdom. Not just the ways of this world, but have revelation, have knowledge of the ways of the kingdom, so that you have the keys to the kingdom. You understand how your Father thinks. You understand what God does. So I love you. I won't go longer, but this is wonderful. We got it on tape now, and there were other stories we could keep getting. I wanted you to tell the story of our pirate friend. That how many of y'all heard the pirate story? Have y'all heard the pirate story? Y'all have never heard the pirate story? Okay.
We have a shipwreck story too. Shipwreck story.
The which one?
Shipwreck story.
The shipwreck. Oh yeah, he was shipwrecked for like 4 days. Thought they lost him in the Siberian jungle, and all kind of stuff. Here we go.